Welcome to another episode of Chax Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today's podcast is sponsored by Venngage. Venngage is a design platform that's not just about creating stunning visuals, but also about inclusivity and accessibility. Venngage doesn't just simplify your design process, but it takes it up a notch higher with built-in accessibility features. Whether you're looking to run an accessibility check on your designs or export them in the PDF UA format, Venngage has got you covered. So head on over to venngage.com and check them out. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor and one of the accessibility wizards at Chax Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I am the other accessibility wizard. We have more. Now, Chad, our Chax team is now if you include everyone, it's like 60 people, but dedicated Chax employees, it's like 20 something odd people, which is just amazing to think this was just you and me having a casual conversation one day. And now here we are. But so I am the other accessibility wizard here at Chax Training and Consulting. And Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And if you'd like your certification, head on over to accessibilityassociation.org/certifications and get more information. And just as a reminder to everyone, all of our online classes or our conference talks, anything that we put out there as digital content qualifies as continuing accessibility education credits, CAEC, C-A-E-C, CAEC. And so just remember, if you take one of our 3-hour classes, that's 3 credits for your ongoing education for your certification.
Yeah, I know that's an area where a lot of people struggle, with maintaining their certification is you've got to have these credits, and they're always like, where am I going to get these or how am I going to get these? And, you attend any one of our classes and you get 3 CAEC credits for attending that class. So easy way to get credits for your certification.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things, it's harder for us actually to keep our CAEC credits because even as instructors, we still have to keep our certification as well. And one of the things I noticed that when I put in my time for my topics for my continuing education, we speak at several different conferences throughout the year, but you can't use the same talk twice toward your CAEC credits. So I was not able to, every topic has to kind of be different. If I give the same speech over and over again, it doesn't keep counting toward my certification.
You mean if you give the same talk at 2 different conferences, you can only use it once?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I thought that was a definitely an interesting thing because I thought, oh, great, I've got like 6 conferences and I have 4 topics at each conference or 2 or 3, yeah, no problem. And then I realized, no, only, each one is a separate thing. So really excited though, Chad, coming up for everyone. If you're looking for a place to go get online training, right? The Design and Accessibility Summit happening later this year is going to be an amazing event. You and I are helping put together the speakers list, and we pretty much got that all solidified now.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited this year. It's just going to be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, if you've not attended the Design Accessibility Summit before, I mean, I think what's cool and what's unique about this summit is that it's really targeted towards designers, right?
Yeah.
Where a lot of the accessibility conferences do not focus on the design end of things, right? I mean, it'll focus on, you and I give talks on PDF accessibility, and of course there's tons of other talks, but they're really not targeted or focused towards designers. And the Design Accessibility Summit is, right? I mean, it's basically designers who are tasked with making content accessible, and it's a great event. It's fun. It's online, so you don't have to travel anywhere. That's another benefit of that. We hope to see you there.
Well, and the live chat, well, it's so interesting because for those of you, so this is September 16th through the 19th, coming up this September. There is a recorded session. We all do our sessions recorded, and the reason is because we sit live in the chat. And if you've never been at a event where the speaker is able to actually converse with you while you're watching the content that they've created, it's a unique experience that is really great to have these kind of parallel conversations along with the actual presentation. And then there's live Q&A afterward, which is pretty cool stuff. So definitely
Absolutely.
cool stuff. All right. So Chad, today I want to talk about workflows for dealing with forms, right? We get people struggling with tables and all sorts of different content, but no one struggles more than with PDF forms because they just come from a variety of different sources. Some people build them in Word, some people build them in InDesign, some people in Google Sheets or Adobe Livecycle, right? I mean, everybody has kind of a different way of doing it, and there are definitely harder and easier ways to do it, right? Chad, what is the easiest way? We'll start there. What is the easiest way to build a form?
Well, like, if I'm tasked with building a fillable PDF form, I am always going to start in Adobe InDesign because it is one of the few programs. I'll say that. I'll keep it. I was going to rephrase, but I'll keep it. It is one of the few programs that allows me to build a document in the source application with the form fields intact that will be retained when I export to the PDF format. It's right. And it does a tremendous job. I mean, I can get so much work done in much less time using Adobe InDesign.
Well, because there's no remediation at the end, right? I mean, it's just everything. And somebody comes back with a change. We always know that people will, sometimes come back. Oh, we want to move this section around, or we want to do this or that. Great, no problem. You do the design work and you export a new PDF and it's good to go, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the only other program I can think of that does that well is Venngage. Just has their new forms program, right?
And that's what caused me pause when I was saying that originally. I was saying, like, I was going to say it's the only program, but then I remembered that Venngage is now doing it too. So it's not the only one, but for me, it's one of the better ones. And I will say, like, as we're talking about InDesign, to kind of amp it up to the next level, there's a product called Made to Tag. Now, Made to Tag is designed for making accessible PDFs out of Adobe InDesign. But one of the components of Made to Tag is form field optimization. Mm-hmm. And so anybody who's created forms out of InDesign knows that all of the options that you have in Acrobat are not available in Adobe InDesign. So for example, I cannot create a date field in Adobe InDesign. Just not there. It's missing. Sometimes I'll create a comb field. And if you don't know what a comb is, it creates a space for every character of the form field.
Oh, so we get this all the time. Yeah. Where it's like your social security number and they've got one individual box for each one of the areas. And I always tell people, don't design that way because you're going to end up with 15 different little boxes and each one of them has to have a tooltip and all of that. And for a user, for the interactive part of this as a screen reader user, it's terrible to have to listen to all that crap as you're trying to figure out where you are.
Right. And so what Made to Tag does is you can use an existing PDF form as a prototype. And you can, when you export your PDF, if your form field matches the name of the form field in the prototype, it'll match the formatting of that form field in your exported PDF.
So how does the comb part of it work? I got lost.
So in Acrobat, if you have a form field that is a comb,
yeah,
right, and you call the form field comb, right, then in InDesign you create a form field name called comb, And in made to tag, if you point it to the prototype, it'll match your exported PDF form field to the prototype field name. And now when you export your PDF, it'll automatically convert to a comb.
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding, and I apologize for this, but
That's
I'm
okay.
thinking a comb, you're talking about a single form field that is divided into a grid of, let's just say, 11 numbers. Let's just say that's what it is, right?
Right.
I, as a layperson, normally in InDesign, I would make 11 little boxes. I would start with one and I would just duplicate them across and call them all, convert them to form fields. But you're saying that there is a way to make a single form field called a comb, and then you've defined that inside the prototype for Acrobat as a comb. I didn't even know that feature existed inside Acrobat.
Yeah.
And then now, because even that feature is available in Acrobat, it's not available inside InDesign, but I can kind of make the bridge of, hey, do that. That's pretty cool. I did not, I was not aware that was a thing. If you're a large organization and you deal with that kind of thing, financial or, otherwise investment organization, boy, that's a great knowledge, tip to have, that made to tag can actually do that.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. I mean, and it's really impressive. I mean, it saves so much time, because most people would just, do it the hard way, right? And after export, they would go in and modify each form field, but this allows you to kind of automate it, and it's really quite powerful.
Well, because when you have to write the tooltip for, let's just say, your social security number, you're like, enter social security digit 1, enter social security digit 2, enter social. I mean, that's ridiculous and cumbersome, right? But you have to do it for accessibility to understand, because as you're tabbing through, how do you know what number or where you are in the sequence? So I get why, but boy, what a terrible user experience. Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely cool. So if I'm designing a form and I want to do make it the easiest way I can, I'm going to do it inside Adobe InDesign. And then secondarily, if I want to do it the hardest way, we'll go both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. Then I'm going to do it in Microsoft Word, right? Or in Google Docs, because none of that, you have your base layer of text, and now you've got to try to bring that into Acrobat and overlay your form on top of that. And for those of you listening who are not aware, even though you create the form fields in the PDF, you can do it a variety of ways. You can do auto detect form field, or you can manually insert them. They do not end up in the tags tree, at least in a way that is correct. And what's very interesting though, Chad, I did some dissection on this. I thought, let me try this. So I created a form in Word. I exported to a PDF, and then I told it auto detect form fields. And then it did a pretty decent job. I saved the document and I opened NVDA, and I thought, I should be able to tab through and see this. And I was able to use a screen reader and get through the content, except there's a problem. And the problem, Chad, for those of you not watching the podcast, by the way, you can see us on YouTube. Go watch our podcast on YouTube. There's some good stuff that happens. Every once in a while, he gets a squirrel in his office, or the dog comes in, or whatever. So lots of good stuff. But the problem that happens with it is that, yes, a screen reader can navigate tab to tab to tab through the different form fields, but if you didn't do all your tooltips exactly correct, and there's information on the page, text on the page, there was no way for the user to get from the form field to the content on the page in the right reading order that allows for the value, or let's just say it's a disclaimer. It says something like, if your dependent has lived with you for more than 2 years and you provide 50% of their 50% or more of their income, check this box, right? If that information wasn't embedded into the tooltip of the checkbox, there's no way for the user to get to it.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're describing, so, I understand what you're saying, but if you read it with a screen reader, it would read all of the text in the form from
No,
top
because
to bottom.
so the initial thing happens is you hit tab, boom, it automatically jumps you to the first form field. So if I know I'm downloading, let's just say I'm downloading an insurance form, right? I
Mhm.
download the form. I, as a screen reader user, if I can't see the content, I know it's a form because I've downloaded the form. I'm going to instinctively hit tab to get to my first form field, and maybe shift tab if if I need to go back. But I'm going to get dumped right into the form field and not even know what the rest of the content is.
Well, and to be clear, what hitting tab does in the screen readers, it switches it to forms mode, right? So hitting the tab
Sure.
key automatically switches you to forms mode. So you're right. Like if you download the document, you're like, oh, this is a form. Let me start filling out the form, and you hit the tab key. Sure, I totally hear what you're saying. But if you try to read it normally,
Right.
it would read through all of the text first, and then you would eventually get to the first form field, which would also
Well,
be an awkward experience.
I agree, but I think what would typically, when I was doing it, this is how it happened for me, is that I listened to the document, I heard the title, I heard the stuff, and I got to the first value, name, right? And then I hit the down arrow, I heard name. And then I hit the down arrow again, and I heard the next piece of text. I'm like, wait a minute, where's the form field? And then I hit tab to find the form field, right? Next focusable item. And it jumped to the name field. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm in the name field. I had without vision, you would have no idea that you've jumped from the on text into the form field. And now when I hit tab, what does it do? It goes to the next field. And it seems like a completely logical solution, and that you're hearing all of the right stuff. And in most cases, you're just fine. But when there's more text on the page, or context on the page, because there's a whole paragraph you should have had to read before you fill out the next section, you have no idea that you've missed it. And this is the thing that people don't understand about forms, is that it is about meaningful sequence. And you can't separate the content from the page and the form fields, because you never know how someone's going to digest that document. Because we hear the complaint all the time, Chad. Well, why do I hear first name, last name, over and over and over again? That seems weird. Yeah. If your document only had just the text that was in the form field and the tooltip as a match, sure, I would be okay with someone artifacting all the on-page content and just having the form fields. But the moment you have content outside of just the label of the form field, all that goes out the window. And you better make sure that that part is tagged.
Yep. And I mean, you kind of experience this when you're reading a form anyway. I know, like when I'm going through a form in a screen reader, if you're reading it normally, you'll hear, the text, right? First name, and then the form field. Enter your, first name here, edit, right? So it always says edit when you're in the form field, and then you could keep on going. But when you want to fill in the form field, it kind of automatically switches to form mode on you, doesn't it?
Sort of. No. So JAWS, you have to press insert spacebar, and that will put you into forms mode. You'll hear a little beep. But you can set your preferences to automatically dump you into forms mode the moment that you get into a form field. And I think that NVDA setting, don't quote me, but I think NVDA setting is the moment you enter a forms field, you have to press escape to get out of forms mode and then back to the content, so that you can switch in between the on-page text and the form field, which if you're hunting and there's other stuff there, sure, reasonable user flow. But if you don't know that something else is there, then you can miss a lot. And, we try to tell people all the time, you need to understand what that user experience is like. And the only way to know is test with a screen reader, so you get whether or not something is easy or hard to fill out.
And I think the key takeaway here too is you and I and nobody else gets to determine how a person chooses to navigate through a form, which is why it's so important that you nest your form fields appropriately within the tag structure, so that regardless of which method they choose, it's going to make logical sense.
Right. And that goes back to what people don't understand, where we started our conversation, is that if you do auto detect form fields, you are not nesting form fields anywhere. If you open your tags tree and you look at it, you're going to see your H1 and a paragraph and another, maybe H2 for your, personal information section. And then you're just going to see paragraph, paragraph, paragraph for all those fields where you think all the fields are supposed to be, but it's just the text. You're like, where's all my form fields? So then how do we go about adding those form fields once we've done the auto detect form fields. We now have our tags, our tags tree open, and we've got to somehow place these form fields in the right place.
Yeah. So if you're using Acrobat, like if Acrobat is your tool that you're using to make this form accessible, what you need to do is you go to your tags tree, open up your tags pane.
Yep.
And in the 3-dot menu, you can choose find. And that'll open up your find dialog box. And then the find dialog box allows you to find a number of various different things. And one of the things is unmarked annotations.
Right.
And what that'll do, I was going to say it's cumbersome. I don't think it's really cumbersome. It just takes a second to kind of figure out what's happening. But when you hit the find button, it'll find the first unmarked annotation, which usually is your first form field. And then you have to hit the tag button in the find dialog box. Now, I forgot something, Dax. And I think I was waiting.
I was like, I know he's going to forget this. I'm going to jump right in here, but go ahead.
So before you do any of that, when you open up your tags pane, it's a very basic step, but it's critical. You want to click on the word tags in the tags tree.
Yep.
Because if you have a tag selected, every tagged form field is going to go inside of that tag.
Right. It's like, here I am in the tags tree.
Yeah.
And now I just want to dump. I've done this. I've ended up like 50 form X objects inside one P tag because I just happen to have my cursor there. And I look over and I'm like, crap, I forgot to select tags. Because when you select tags, what it does is it takes each one of those form X objects and creates a proper form tag and puts the form X object inside the tag, but it's a double-edged sword because now that those form X objects are inside the form tag, you can't see what they are. So you have to open each one of those little form tags to kind of expand it to see the form X object, because the form X object will also have the form field name as part of the object. So it'd say form X first, or if that was the first name. And that way you can kind of identify which actual form fields they go to.
I mean, I just click on the form tag and then it highlights it on the page.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, true. But if there's been times where I've mistakenly moved the wrong one into the wrong place because I wasn't paying attention.
Certainly.
So I like to expand those out so that I can see the form X object's name. And then I'm not looking at the page. I'm just looking at the tag tree. I mean, this is a cool discussion about differences in how people tag stuff. I mean, it is 100% valid to click on the folder and look at the object on the page. And also vice versa, to open the tag and
Sure.
actually look at the content object. So, but either way, you've got to select that tag's name at the top.
Yep.
But what it does is so unfortunate, Chad. I don't understand. I wish it worked differently, but what happens when you do that? When you click on the tags at the top of the tags text at the top of your tags tree, what's the next part of that?
Then you go to the 3-dot menu and choose find.
Right.
And then that'll bring up the find dialog box and you choose unmarked annotations, hit the find button. It'll highlight the first form field. And then you click the tag button and then you could choose how you want to tag it. So we want to choose form, right? We choose form and then we hit OK. And what happens next is kind of several things happen. It tags the form field and automatically finds the next unmarked annotation.
which screws me up every time because I always want to hit find next the moment I've hit tag element, and I'm like, okay, find next. No,
Then
don't
you'll
hit
skip
find
it.
next because you
Then
just
you'll skip
skip
it.
the one. You skip the one you had, and then you can't go back. There's not a find previous,
Mm-mm.
so you've got to go through that whole thing. And if you've got 100 form fields in your document, that's a pain in the ass. So
It is.
definitely just hit tag element, and then you go through this little loop of tag element, dialog box pops back up. It already knows that you put form in it last time, so now it's just a tag element enter, and you just keep going that way until you get to the end, right?
And if you do it right, you could do it pretty quick, because what I do, Dax, is I hover the cursor over the find button and I click it with my mouse, and then I hit the enter key on my keyboard to commit it. So I could just go mouse, enter, mouse, enter, mouse, enter, mouse, enter.
Yep.
And just, you do a little bit of keyboard twister here, but you can actually bang through it pretty quick, if you keep the sequence going. But yeah.
I just had an amazing thought, right? So one of the benefits of Chad and I becoming a new company with our new Chax family that was previously Taman, is that we have some coders that work for our organization, and they can code some pretty cool stuff. In fact, they can code inside Acrobat, which is great.
Yeah.
And we're working on some really cool things, but I just thought of something, Chad. It would be a tiny little script that once you just say tag form fields, right? And it would just literally go right
tag
through that entire thing. And you could just hands off the keyboard, because at that point, it's literally just, mouse click enter until you have no more mouse click enters, right? That would be so easy to script, and it would save 10 minutes of time, 5 minutes of time. Honestly, even if it took 3 minutes of time away from my time to sit there and hit click enter, that would just be great.
And I mean, I'm with you. I mean, that's going to be our solution.
Yes.
But I can't help but to think, how hard would it be for Adobe to add a tag all button?
Impossible, Chad. And I say that incorrectly on purpose. Impossible. Because we've been asking Adobe, bless their hearts, for decades to fix stuff. In fact, they just came out with a new Adobe Max London was just happened. And so they released a bunch of new features for Adobe Max on Reddit. And there was a whole list of, here are all the new things. Tell us what you think about them. And every one of the responses on Reddit was, that's great, but how about fix the things that are broken first?
Yeah.
And so while I love the idea that they could just do that correctly, I'm not holding my breath.
Well, yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I mean, what it's doing is making us look elsewhere, right? I mean, like Made to Tag is a classic example. Like everything I've been asking Adobe to do, Made to Tag does, right? Yeah. So I just stopped asking, right? It's like, okay, cool. I have a product. It does what I need it to do. Great. I'm done, right? Like, I'm not going to put any more effort into this. I have what I need.
I just wish if I were paying $59 a month for software that it would actually work the way, I get super fancy, really esoteric features that maybe only I or you or a handful of people would use. But come on, row headers in a table, the ability to set map styles to character styles, or all of that. I mean, we've had plenty of episodes, guys. If you want to hear more about what we'd love to see in Acrobat, go listen to some more podcasts. We have more than 106 episodes on the podcast platform. So definitely go take a look at that. So we kind of got off on our tangent. I apologize for those of you who are listening, going, get back to the point. So we have now identified the form fields. They are all in a big giant list at the bottom of our tags tree. And now comes the painstaking part of trying to move them up into the order in the tags where they go. Name is a P tag typically, and that form field is going to go, that form folder is going to go right underneath the P. Now it can be inside the P. It would be okay to be a child of the P. It would be okay to be a sibling of the P, right? It can be either or. And go ahead, Chad.
Well, no, I don't mean to interrupt you, and I love what you're saying because you're right. It could either be a child of a P tag or it could be a sibling of the P tag. The problem with it being a sibling of the P tag is you're now going to have to apply the placement attribute to every one of those form tags because they need to be if you want to pass the checker, right?
I'm spoiled, Dax, Chad. I'm spoiled. The reason I said it could be a sibling of the form, the P tag, is because
Common Look is going to fix it for you.
Yeah, because Common Look is going to say, hey, you've got a form field with an invalid placement. Do you want us to set it correctly? And I just hit yes, please. And off it goes.
And I totally agree with you. But for the benefit of the folks who are listening who don't have a copy of Common Look, I feel like the path of least resistance is going to be to make the form field a child of the P tag, because a form field by default is an inline level object. And so when you make it inline, it's happy and you're going to be good to go. But if you make it a sibling, you're going to have to take an extra step and apply the placement attribute, a block, to all of those tags.
Well, and it would have been nice if when Adobe detected the form field that it actually placed it, you could choose block or inline as a checkbox so that you could have it checked by default for everyone or unchecked by default or whatever. So
we keep going back to this, Dax, right?
I know. I just want so bad for someone to listen to me. So
I know.
Yeah. But so anyway, so now that we've got we're moving these form fields up into the order, in the tag order as a child of a P. We'll go with that workflow as the normal workflow. If you've got 5 form fields, great for you because your job's done.
You're done.
If you've got 200, because this is a financial investment form, buckle up, Buttercup, because you got some time to spend, right?
Absolutely. And to give some people maybe some shortcut techniques, because again, depending on the length of your form, you now have all your form fields at the bottom of the tags tree, and now you're up at the beginning of the tags tree, and you got to move that form field. So one of the techniques that's really helpful for me, you can right-click on a form tag and choose cut.
Right.
And then if you go to where you want it in the tags tree, you can right-click and choose paste, and it'll drop it right below the selected tag.
Yep.
Is paste as child an option?
No, I wish it was. That's another one of those things, Chad. I wish paste as child was. It is in Access PDF. In Access PDF, you can.
I think that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Right. So, but what I do, I go one step further. I'll grab 15 or 20 of the FormX objects, the form fields, and I'll just cut them from the bottom and paste them up farther in the tags tree. And then I can just drag, and then go grab another group and then drag, and kind of do it that way. Yeah. I'm
going to correct you. Paste child is an option in Acrobat.
No way.
It is. So I'm going to narrate this. Dax currently doesn't believe me.
Holy cow.
Dax is now checking on his own.
How did I not know paste as child? It's the shortcut S. So if you hit Control X to cut, then you right click on a tag and hit S, you now have pasted as a child.
So that works really well with the forms that I'm talking about. And that prevents you from having to drag, right? Because if you're in a long form, you click on that form and you have to drag all the way up and get it right where you want it to. Instead, you can cut the form field, go to the tag where you want it to go and say paste child, and it'll drop it right where you want it to go.
Now, I don't do, and I'll tell you why this doesn't really matter for me. We're talking about time-saving techniques. I'm going to go back to Common Look. I discovered something amazing in Common Look. So in a well laid out form, your field names are really close. Your field labels are really close to your form fields. Everything lines up pretty well. I can just do auto detect form fields inside Acrobat. I don't need to do the find, untagged annotations and all that stuff. I can just leave them untagged. Open up Common Look and run the PDF checker inside Common Look. And Common Look's going to say, hey, I found a bunch of untagged annotations here. Do you want to try to figure out where they go in the tags tree and put them in the correct form field, the form tags? And you just say yes. And I will tell you, Chad, 70% of the time it works flawless. And then 30% of the time you've got cleanup to do. It might paste it in the item above it or below it or whatever, but holy cow, saves me so much time compared to having to manually put those in order. And we've got a couple clients in the financial sector who are really struggling with how much time it's taking, because their workflow before was they had these master PDFs where they would just grab all of the form fields, from one section and paste it into a new document because they've already added JavaScript and already added all these other things to it. So it was super easy. And then when they came to us and said, hey, we need to make these accessible, and we started talking about how they have to do all this this detection and moving things, it was a huge change for them. In fact, they're still struggling with it. So yeah. Common Look, huge time saver when it comes to that kind of thing. I just, again, but there's a caveat, and I kind of hinted on it, and you and I were talking off air before the podcast, and we'll end the podcast with this segment here, which is designing forms, thinking about the fact that your workflow is going to be auto detection, radio buttons versus checkboxes. Are your radio buttons a circle and your checkbox is a square? Because if you want to use the auto detect form field, you better know Acrobat will not let you put a radio button inside a square when it does the auto detect form fields, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's for that reason too, like if I have a form that was designed in Word, I actually prefer, a lot of times in Word, people will put a circle to kind of indicate where a radio button would be, or a box to indicate where. I like to strip them out of Word. And I like to let the form field be responsible for the visual appearance of the element, because what I found is if you have a shape there and you're trying to put a radio button on top of it, a lot of times it's not perfect. And you end up with like a double. And I'm just so nitpicky that way. I hate that look, when I'm doing my form. So,
another thing to consider is that if you do in fact use symbols inside your document, whether it's in InDesign or in Word, know this, that if you use a wingding or a font for the circle or the square, it will not auto detect those in your PDF. When you run auto detect form fields, it looks for a specific shape object, an X object, and a wingding or a Zingbat or whatever the font you're using that is a glyph, that character is not considered a graphic. And so it doesn't pick it up as a spot for a radio button or a checkbox. Because I ran into this so many times. I'm like, I did auto detect and it missed every checkbox and radio button. I'm like, what's going on? And after I did the research, I realized that it's because it's not a shape object, but
that makes sense, because it's a character, right?
And it doesn't recognize it or whatever. Yeah.
Now in InDesign, what you could probably do is select that character and choose convert text to outline.
Right.
And then it would probably recognize it because now it is a shape, right?
Right. Well, but if you've got 50 checkboxes, who wants to go around highlighting 50 checkboxes to do that, right? So the other thing we were talking about is that if you are designing a form, a lot of times we like to use these rules, right? These dividers. Maybe it's a big, thick black line that separates one section from another. Just know that if you've got space, white space above or below those areas, which we typically design with, auto detect form field is likely going to place extra form fields throughout your document mistakenly, where it thinks that you've got something to go there. Another thing to be thinking about is colons. I always see this. It's like personal information, colon, as a main heading level 2 above a section about personal information. And that would seem logical, but because that personal information is sitting on top of the table, it's got a bottom rule and a colon. And those are both the things that Acrobat's going to look for to go, oh, a form field goes here because it's got a bottom rule and a colon. So just be aware that when you use that auto detect form field and you've designed your form a certain way, you might end up with more form fields than you want. But if you designed it thinking about what some of these triggers are, you can get to a point where your form fields are really just getting detected the way you would hope, the way that you envision, because you're thinking about designing with accessibility in mind. In fact, that's one of our most popular classes that people go to, our online class that you can find on our website, right?
I literally just finished teaching that class before we recorded this podcast. Yeah. So yeah. And they loved it. Right. And there's so many good nuggets in that class, Dax, right? Like so many good things to talk about, so many things to make people think about, like use of color and, various things that as a designer, they weren't thinking about previously, but now all of a sudden it like opens up their eyes to this whole other world of, oh my gosh, like I've been doing this my whole life. And now I need to rethink my approach because it has ramifications in the accessibility space.
Well, definitely for another topic of another podcast, but we always get the comment, what are some accessible combinations? Because my designs are boring when I'm designing for accessibility. And the answer is, once we teach you the formula of how to pick the right combinations, there are millions of combinations.
Yeah.
It's just picking the right two. So,
yeah.
Well, I hope, guys, that we've given you some really good information to think about when it comes to forms. Forms are such a struggle. One, because you start in the wrong program. Two, because you design the wrong way. And three, because your workflow before you have to think about accessibility didn't account for all of the things that are necessary, like tooltips and order and all of the other things. And so if you can tackle and think about those things ahead of time and design like an InDesign, you really can make forms no harder than anything else. And honestly, really very easy. But when we start in the wrong programs, we don't take advantage of the software the right way, and we don't have the right tools like Common Look or Venngage or any of the other programs out there. Many of them have form things that kind of can help make the things quicker. If you don't have those extra tools, roll up your sleeves, grab some coffee, because you're going to be there a while. It just takes time.
It does. Which is why, we do offer remediation services for our clients, and forms are more expensive because
we charge per form field. We have, just to give you guys a little insight, we charge from 1 to 15 form fields, and then 15 to 25, and then over 25. It's a cost per form field because you really do have to manually move each one of those, validate that the tooltip is meaningful, and heaven forbid it's in a different language. Now you've got to go get that translated and dumped in, right? Yeah. And so if you're designing an InDesign, we have a script that I can dump foreign languages into the tooltips. Those things can be accomplished in mass. And so it's just a matter of starting with InDesign to be able to get all that stuff done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, listen, once again, we want to thank Venngage for being the sponsor of today's podcast. And just remember, Venngage is not just a design platform, but it's also about creating stunning visuals and about inclusivity and accessibility. So head on over to venngage.com. And remember, if you're looking for in-person or online training or struggling to establish an accessibility program in your organization, head on over to accessibilityunraveled.com to learn more. My name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where every other week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.